The trigger for this mobilization was a request by the Hazarian-controlled U.S. government for Germany to accept a massive false flag attack on its territory as an excuse for totalitarian Hazarian rule. The Germans have decided to refuse this request and are instead allying themselves with the Russians and effectively joining the UK and Turkey in a Western-led move against the Hazarian-controlled American government, the sources agree. This information can be confirmed in a series of German government statements seen in the corporate media. These include the announcement of the emergency food supply request, a statement by the German foreign minister that Germany needs to work with Russia, and a statement by the economy minister that the US Hazarian-led TTIP trade agreement was dead in the water. The German move is just the opening salvo of what is expected to be a decisive campaign to permanently end Hazarian control of the West and its remaining slave states. Expect similar moves in many countries as the autumn offensive against the final Hazarian mafia strongholds goes into full gear. As the snowball effect continues, keep your eyes on France, Japan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil among other places over the coming months. Another clear signal that things are not as normal is the fact that Hazarian presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has become too scared to meet actual real people and has begun using green screen to tape her campaign performances. That is because the people on the bounty list issued by the White Dragon Society have been vanishing from public view one by one. That is also because her mass-murdering Bush/Clinton/Rockefeller mafia bosses are hated by a vast portion of the world's awakening public. The Chinese, for their part, have given up on Hillary and, since they also have no love for Republican candidate Donald Trump, are now considering a more radical move. They have invited Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to visit China before the big September 4th 5G20 meeting the Chinese are hosting. Sources in Asian secret societies say the Chinese will ask Trudeau if he would be interested in leading a Mexican/American/Canadian-North American alliance. It is not clear, however, just how aware of reality Trudeau is. The Canadian corporate press parrots its U.S. counterparts like the New York Times in presenting outright lies as facts. In their worldview, it was not the Saudis and their Bush/Clinton allies who used sarin gas in Syria but rather the dictator Assad, never mind that he was elected in an internationally observed poll. In their worldview as well, Russia's Vladimir Putin is an evil dictator who invaded the Crimean Peninsula. The same press holds to the worldview that Hillary Clinton is the reasonable status quo candidate and that Donald Trump is a crazy maniac who must not be allowed to have power. This writer's own mother, who gets her information from Canadian newspapers and the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, CBC, held views along these lines. Robert Fulford, a prominent Canadian writer, not a direct relative of your correspondent, for example, wrote an editorial in the Canadian press that also went along with this worldview. So it is quite possible Trudeau is still too brainwashed to understand the historical opportunity the Asians are going to offer him. In any case, the Chinese are going to try to make the most of the G20 meeting they are hosting. They have invited countries that are not in the G20 to participate as well as top European Union leaders in a sign they are going to push hard for big changes in the way this planet is run. The meeting follows months of concerted selling of U.S. Treasury bonds by central banks all over the world. This time it is clear the Asians are not going to let the usual criminals take over after the U.S. corporate government's bankruptcy negotiations conclude. The owners of the Federal Reserve Board system, for their part, are locked in a death spiral. They are printing their own fiat money, to buy shares and corporate bonds issued by their own companies. It is like a snake swallowing its own tail. Everybody else, including old-fashioned pension fund managers and other institutional investors with integrity, are avoiding the entire cesspool that U.S. financial markets have become. That is the real reason why Fed Chairperson Janet Yellen hinted at raising interest rates last week. If they do try to raise interest rates, it will have the opposite effect of what they expect. because it will be seen as a sign of desperation, not strength. Even looting the Japanese National Pension Fund to the tune of over $100 billion is not enough to help these criminals keep their empire solvent. The situation has become such that Jacob de Rothschild has warned that the system of central banks his family was instrumental in creating was headed for systems failure. The Rand Corporation, a warmongering neocon think tank, has reacted to the situation by saying the US should declare war on China sooner rather than later. However, they are about 10 years too late to make that call. At the time the Pentagon ran simulation after simulation involving a war with China, and the result was always the same: the loser would unleash nuclear war, and the result would be that 90% of the world's population dies and the northern hemisphere of the planet becomes uninhabitable. That is the same reason why the Asians are not going to do anything arrogant that will provoke the military-industrial complex into choosing mutually assured destruction. Instead, the brainy part of the military-industrial complex is already dealing with the situation with the compelling argument that we do not want to replace Hazarian mob rule with Chinese totalitarianism. The Japanese, Koreans, Indonesians, Vietnamese, Indians and others understand this argument, as do the Chinese.